Hey, what's up everybody? This is Joseph Private One, and today I want to do another video on some more Atlas patch notes. And there are some pretty massive changes in this, honestly slightly tempting me to play on officials again, even though I probably won't do that. A lot of these changes do positively affect officials and just the game overall. A ton of big changes. So first off, we have weight change. Gold coins have had their weight reduced by 50%. That's good. Gold coins were ridiculously heavy. Now it's easier to do a lot of maps at a time, because even if you did like one masterwork map or something, unless you had like 6 people there, like you would be multiple times overweight even if you max out weight. So glad gold coins are reduced. This also will let you have more of useful stuff on ships instead of having a ridiculous amount of weight into gold because you have a ship full of NPCs. The weight of all items have been reduced by 30% globally. Does not apply to structures that are placed on boats, only items in inventories. So this is pretty big. So this is literally a 30% weight reduction in everything. And as it states, when you place say you have some wood ceilings in your inventory, they will be 30% lighter than before this patch now, but when you place them on a ship, it'll still be the same weight. So that's not reduced. I don't think that really needed reduced, but a 30% overall weight reduction for everything carrying around on characters, on animals, everything is massive. I'm also wondering, since it's inventory stuff, it should also just be everything on a boat, all materials, all weapons, all that type of stuff should also be reduced. So even though the structures on the boat won't weigh less, the stuff you're holding in the boat will. So this will also be a pretty big reduction in the amount of weight a boat's going to be carrying, just kind of for repairs and gear sets that you keep on it. Weight sales now provide 20% more weight. Maybe they'll actually be useful. I don't exactly know the numbers between all the different sizes of weight sales, but maybe they'll be used now. Probably not though, unless they're like super good now, because speed sales are just kind of overall better in my opinion. Diving suit now provides a buff which gives players a 50% extra base weight when diving underwater. Now that's super nice, because if you've ever went to use a diving suit and, scrap a sunken ship, if it's a bigger ship, it's pretty hard, especially if it's a galleon. Like a couple planks, sometimes even like one plank just fills up your weight because it has so much resources. So that'll definitely be helpful for actually, people wanting to have diving suits on their ships, wanting to go down and dive and, salvage ships onto other ships or by their base, anything like that. This is also a big one here. Water barrel now has a base weight of 75. It can now hold up to 6,000 water. It was previously 500. For every 1,000 water, it'll add 20 weight. This means the lightest it'll be is 75 and the max will be 195. So before, water barrels could hold 500 and they'd be 500 weight. I think the base was like 50, maybe 50 or 100. So this is a just massive buff to water barrels, specifically on ships, because if you're sitting them next to your base, it doesn't matter at all how much they weigh. But specifically on ships, this will make people actually have water barrels on ships. And if you don't know, what they're basically used for on ships, besides drinking for humans, is that you can get a bucket, you can fill up your bucket in that, and you can splash a bucket onto fire that's on your ship and put the fire out. So this could also be a kind of nerf to like fire attacks to ships, if the players choose to do it, which I think now, since they weigh a lot less, most ships will probably have water barrels on them now, because going from 500 with 500 water to 195 with 6,000 water is a just massive buff, which will probably cause a lot of people to at least have one on their ship. You'll probably only need one unless you're like on a galleon or something. Players now start the game with 30% more personal weight, which is huge, and will gain an additional 40% per level. So base weight has been increased from 250 to 325, and bonus per level is up from 10 to 14. And this doesn't also factor in the 10% you get if you go age 90 and then go get a Fountain of Youth, which is just going to be much bigger on top of that. So this seems like it's kind of the start of stuff that they were talking about going in March, which are kind of trying to make the game much less hardcore, which definitely shows here. But this, like, weight management stuff is something that, you know, is nice in these games, or adds some type of challenge in these games. But when they're excessive, it just excessively adds a lot of downtime, inventory management, all that type of stuff that just slows down the game massively. And I think these are all good changes that were pretty needed, because, you know, how much stuff weighed, like, you could farm for a couple minutes and then go have to put everything somewhere because your inventory would be full, even if you maxed inventory weight or player weight. So this is all super good. Tamed creatures now gain an additional 6% weight per level into weight rather than 4. So right now, if you put a level and a weight into an animal, they get 4. Well, before this patch, you'd get 4. Now it's 6. Just tame level weight increase, which is always pretty good. So yeah, all of this massive changes, but in my opinion, really good changes. You know, making the game a bit less hardcore, a bit less, making the game feel a bit less like a job is always going to be a good thing, because the game's always going to be super hardcore, just how these survival games are built, or how they build survival games. So it's always going to be hardcore, and making it much more player friendly, have much more quality of life stuff to keep you doing the stuff that you think is fun, rather than almost all of your time being stuff that you don't really like doing. Elephants and rhinos now provide a 25% weight reduction to their specialized resources. So they added it back, and they added it to rhinos, which is really good. So basically what this means is elephants gather wood, rhinos gather stone. Now, I'm not sure if rhinos would get like a weight reduction in flint. I don't think so. Or elephants would get a weight reduction in thatch. I don't think so. But any of that stuff in their inventory is going to be 25% less weight in their inventory. And that's going to be on top of all of this stuff that just changed. So it's going to be 30% less. So these animals, you're going to be able to take out elephants and rhinos for a long time, fill up their inventory with a ton of stuff, and then go back to base. This is going to be a massive increase to people who are set up with elephants and rhinos, took the time to get them. They're going to be much more useful, and it's all utility stuff. It's not, you know, we're bumping up the HP and damage a bunch. It's all utility. Even though there is buffs to the damage and resistance down here, this part is still utility, and it's massively needed. Animals are going to be, you know, useful again. Even though, like, elephants and rhinos were still useful, it was kind of really slow and annoying to use them. Giraffe now receives an approximate 2 times bonus when harvesting thatch, and has a 25% weight reduction when carrying thatch. So giraffes might actually be the thing to use for thatch now, because if you don't know, there wasn't any animal that got more thatch than a human did with a pickaxe. So they get 2 times more now, which might make them better than a human baseline. That'll require testing. And has a 25% weight reduction when carrying thatch, just like the elephants and rhinos. Thatch didn't weigh a lot, so a giraffe's going to be able to carry just like all the thatch you could ever need in one trip. But that's still pretty nice. I assume they're just doing that because they're going to do that with all the, like, most of the resources for animals that specifically are made to gather something, that they have a weight reduction on that thing, which is probably going to be baseline throughout the game, which does make sense and is something good, even though a giraffe weight reduction for thatch isn't really going to be needed. Elephant base stamina has been increased to 390. Rhino base stamina has been increased to 190. Giraffe base stamina has been increased to 440. And all of this stuff right here is all utility stuff to the biggest utility animals, which I definitely think is the way they should be going with a lot of the animals, even though there are, like, overall buffs to combat. Utility animals, they should focus more on those than just straight combat animals, even though they should, like, those animals should still be somewhat good in combat, and there should still be animals that are good at combat. So a bunch of utility increases to animals, really good changes in my opinion. Baby creatures will no longer take into account the temperature alterations from cold front and heat wave. So if you don't know, in this game, if you have an animal or a baby that you are, you know, raising, it has to have a certain temperature, or it won't grow. Actually, I don't know if it'll gain like growth, but it will start to die. And cold fronts and heat waves could just kill your babies. Like almost nobody was breeding on officials because it was ridiculous. It just took too long and had way too much micromanagement. This does help a bit. Cold fronts and heat waves would just wreck you. That does help a bit. I do think that the baby, you know, raising babies in the game does need to be looked at quite a bit more, but that is a good start. Tamed creature resistance has been increased by 30% and damage increased by 20%. So tamed creatures take 30% less damage basically and do 20% more damage. A pretty big buff. We'll see if this is needed or if anything comes out super like overpowered. I definitely like that they're doing the specific changes up here. Having some overall changes is still good, but you know, we'll need to see if it's like too strong for some animals or not. Bear health has been reduced by 10%. Bears were pretty tanky. I don't know if they need this. It's not a huge change, but they're still going to be overall more tanky. That's probably why they did it. They're still going to be overall more tanky now because they get 30% damage reduction. NPC crew can no longer be renamed. NPC crew can no longer be placed on bear and horse carts. So basically what this was is people would put on a horse or a bear, they'd put the cart on the back, they'd put a swivel on the back and put an NPC on it. Then they would just sprint around islands in PvP, and that's how PvP was done by a ton of massive tribes and a ton of people. That's all they would do. You would either have to like kill the animal, try to kill the NPC off it, or just get killed by swivel guns all day. So that is a really good change. Company tame limits have been doubled, so just allowing people to have a lot more tames. I don't know who's actually sitting on this like tame limit, but you can have 500 people to company. 800 tames was a bit low. 1600 tames maybe a bit high, but still with 500 people in a company it makes sense. It's supposed to be a massive game. The interval between paying crew has been increased by 40%. There is now more time before you have to pay them again. So basically you have to pay crew 40% less. Pretty much that's basically what it's doing. Massive change, super good, especially for defenses, because if you don't know, if you're trying to set up a bunch of defenses, especially a big company all over an island, the biggest setback was gold. Food was pretty easy. I mean, you could do it once a day or probably once every 2 days just with berries and a bear, and that's probably the quickest way to keep it going. The ammo would take a bit more farming, but unless you're constantly having like people run into like puckles or something, the ammo wasn't that big of a deal. So it was mostly the gold. So that's a massive change. This also helps with ships and everything like that. Ships of the Damned will no longer physically damage a team's structures and anchored boats unless they have specifically damaged by that target, or have been specifically damaged. PvE servers only. So this is a PvE change. Ships of the Damned will no longer target a team's anything basically, except ships that are currently sailing, unless damaged by those things. Structures and items. Puckle damage has been increased to 100 base and 50% more armor piercing. So this is a massive increase in puckle damage, which basically means a massive increase to defenses. So puckle damage, base damage has been increased to 100. I don't remember what it was now, but that's a pretty big increase, and 50% more armor piercing, so people wearing armor will get pierced a lot more. Also animals. So this is just a massive increase. Puckle NPCs are still immune. Now they cost less. They do a lot more damage. Massive increase to defenses. So there's going to be puckles everywhere now. So it's going to be much harder to raid, which is good because it was way too easy right now. Carbines reload time has been reduced by 10%. Pistol reload time has been reduced by 33%. Blunderbuss reload has been reduced by 20%. Blunderbuss damage to creatures have been increased by 50% to wild and 20% to tamed. So just overall gun increases. Now this is nice because guns were still not the strongest thing. Like say a carbine should probably 1 to 2 shot anybody, especially since all these guns are single shot guns. Like the aiming isn't super easy in this game, especially with lag and all that stuff. So weapons, like you weren't really ever one-shotting people with weapons. So I think that's a nice increase. the biggest thing probably in this patch. Stone structure sap crafting requirements changed to fiber. They finally learned that stone structures should not be taking sap, so they changed it back to fiber. The biggest change, I think metal is fine to keep in. It's 15 metal. I think that's fine to keep in. I don't think anyone's going to object to that very much. Stone structures not having sap though, massive. This is definitely going to probably bring back a good amount of players if they actually end up seeing this. Because sap was just the most ridiculous thing. People were just using wood. So this is the best, basically, revert of a change that they've done so far, and this definitely is going to bring some people back and make a lot of people currently still playing the game happy. Wooden structures resistance to explosives and siege damage type increased by 30%. Wood structures are now tankier again. Stone structure resistance to explosives and siege damage types increased by 45%. So a massive damage reduction for stone structures, putting it back up to probably closest to where it was before. And still not up there because I wasn't like 2 or 3 times for the explosives, something like that. So it's not going to be as tanky as before the first changes, but this is still really good, making them more tanky so you can't be raided near as easily because stone structures are only land-based stuff. So this is a massive increase. Also, wood structures being tankier, that's also on ships. So ships are overall going to be tankier, not planks. Unless planks are considered wood structures, which they might be, but I don't know. But this is just pretty much making, you know, raiding, ship fighting, it's going to make it all more tanky, which I definitely think is good. Especially the stone structure stuff. Base raiding should be super hard, so massive changes. Really good changes overall. Explosive barrel design reverted until the redesign, so explosive barrels, I guess, are the same as before, so they can be placed on ships and stuff again. So just a complete revert to everything they did until a complete redesign. I don't exactly know how I feel about that. With the other changes though, we're going to go over. I think it's fine for now. Reverting damage increase to crafting cost, decrease to grenades. So basically they're reverting the damage increase to grenades, and they're reverting the crafting cost decrease to grenades. Probably because the explosive barrels are reverted now, so they don't have the damage reductions and stuff like that. I mean, I don't really know how I feel about that. I don't know if this is going to be that big of like a change in any people's eyes, but we'll have to see. Oil jar weight has been increased to 10, and fires lit on top of it have had the reduction reduced by, or had their duration reduced by 50%. This is a pretty big change as well. Oil jars have been made more difficult to craft. I assume that's just they cost more to craft. That's not very specific, but this is a pretty big change because oil jars were still like the top PvP thing, especially for enemy ships. You would just, you know, throw an oil jar on something and let it burn for super long. Ratings, wood bases was also pretty easy with these, because a door would almost get broken by like 1 oil jar. Like 1.5 oil jars would break like any wood thing. So it's a pretty big increase, or a pretty big nerf to these, and we'll see how this works out if they need buffed back up again, if they're just kind of useless, because that's definitely something you don't want. Is this item just being useless now? Fully anchored ships, this is a massive change as well, and kind of something I said when I was talking about the offline rating of ships being one of the biggest issues in the game. This is something I kind of recommended. Fully anchored boats now have a buff which provides a 300% structure damage resistance. So basically, anchored boats now take 300% more damage to destroy stuff. This is a super good change. Basically making ships super tanky. I mean, if you don't have defenses on the ships, it's still going to take a long, or it's still going to be pretty easy to raid ships if you don't have defenses on them, if no one's around them. But this gives a lot more time to see if a ship's being sunk. It gives a lot more time for NPCs to shoot at people if they're raiding your ship. You know, if someone comes by when you're online, this has actually happened a lot with people would attack us when we were online in a ship. Even if you have defenses, they would get someplace where a ship they could shoot that's not as defended at some spot. And then they'll just be able to destroy your ship super fast without you being able to do anything, really. Because, you know, you just know it's a ship, you have to scramble to try to do stuff, and, you know, you have a full volley shooting your ship. It's half destroyed before you can even do anything. And this will help with that as well. So a massive increase to, you know, or a massive nerf to offline raiding, a massive nerf to just attacking people, so much harder to raid people, much harder to raid their boats. In my opinion, a massive change. This type of change is something that would make me want to play on officials again, just because it, you know, you're not going to lose your boat nearly as much with this. With all the other changes as well, you're not going to lose your boats nearly as much. Then we have quality of life stuff. Old age no longer has a debuff, so that was just like, you know, like the 5% weight reduction, all that type of stuff. It's because they're reworking it. A Fountain of Youth is now available on all Golden Age runes. We'll be looking at a redesign to how it works in the near future. Players can now purchase a respec soup at the commodity traders and free ports. Thank God, that is a massive change as well. So basically how the respec worked before that was every level you got a respec. If you were down leveling, you couldn't respec anymore. That's legitimately it. And this is a super good change to the game, because now if you want to, say you're like done taming, or you don't want to tame anymore, or you want to build ships now, you want to try something else in the game, if you didn't have any levels, you were screwed. If you only had one respec, you were screwed. In super high level, it took you super long to level up. So this is just a really good change. It's probably just going to be gold, like 20 or 50 gold or something. So it's still going to be super good to have this in the game. Players now have approximately 20% more skill points per level. This is a pretty massive increase as well, because you can get over level 100 if you have like all the discoveries or something like that. Once you're reaching max level, like with all the discoveries, you're probably going to be almost like getting every skill in the game. Like that's pretty nice. You'll definitely be able to probably have every skill in the game if you would be at max level that is currently allowed on official servers with all the discoveries and stuff. So that's pretty cool. It's definitely nice to be able to, you know, once you get high level, once you know the game and everything, you know, having more skill points to use once you put in all that time to get all the discoveries, get more levels, having more skill points is always nice. And then just having them baseline, having more skill points so you're not as tied in to certain things, always good. Fix a bug where quality specific equipment would display a multiplicative % stat increase and a flat stat increase, but only one would work. Going forward, the flat stat increase will be made obsolete, and items will no longer be generated with it. Quality stat items will now only generate the multiplicative stat bonus, and this change will be retroactive. So I was having this issue once I just rented a server, because I had a bunch of stuff that I was, you know, I was just trying to like spawn in stuff to get like the max speed I could or something like that, right? And it just wasn't working. Like, so I guess I was just getting ones that the percentage wasn't working, and it was just a flat stat one working. So this is a big change that I didn't actually know until I was spawning stuff in. Probably a lot of people haven't gotten super high tier stuff made yet, unless they're on massive companies or on unofficial servers. Fix a bug which would allow where items would falsely state that they were providing a speed benefit did not do anything. They should not generate any more going forward. Okay, so I should have read this first. So there's no longer speed buffs in the game. I'm guessing that's what that is. There's no longer they were providing a speed buff. So speed buffs weren't supposed to be in the game. So I guess there's no speed buffs in the game, which I'm not even that really mad about. Like, speed increases in Ark kind of ruin player-to-player PvP. People just zipping around, you like weren't able to hit them whatsoever. So I guess that's definitely fine. They should probably work on reducing how expensive crafting high-tier stuff is, but that's not that big of a deal to me. I was just trying it on a, you know, rented server where I could spawn everything and I wanted. Mortars will no longer be able to shoot at players outside of rendered distance. That's kind of weird. So I don't understand what that actually means, because the mortar just has a range, so it would still shoot the range. Doesn't mean you can't hit players. Like, would a player be able to de-render in that amount of range? I don't exactly know what that means. And if you had higher render distance, Would it count that in, or would it be like a server render distance? No idea. That's kind of a weird change. We'll have to see how that plays out. But in my opinion, these are massive changes that could bring back people to this game. Pretty much all of this stuff is stuff I was having issues with. That was why I was quitting official servers. I don't know if I'm going to start playing on officials again. But this definitely might make me start playing the game a lot more, because I was pretty much only playing on my rented server to, you know, make videos and stuff. But this is massive increases. But subscribe if you want to see more Atlas content. Leave a like if you liked the video. Leave a comment down below what you think about Atlas as a whole, what you think about these changes, which I think are all, like, most of these are extremely good changes for the game. So, thanks for watching.